my husband introduced me as the maid at his family's Thanksgiving dinner. He gave me a bucket and told me to scrub the floors while he ate turkey with his guests. I smiled. I served. I kept my mouth shut, because I was terrified of what would happen if I told the truth. But one woman at that table looked at me differently. She didn't see a maid, she saw something else, and that's when everything changed. By the end of that night, my husband had no idea that his world was about to collapse, and I was the one holding the match. My name is Olivia. My name is Olivia Marie Thornton Whitmore, but for one terrible Thanksgiving, my husband told everyone my name was Maria. He said I was the maid. He said I was just the help. He handed me a bucket of soapy water and a rag and told me to scrub the floors while his family ate turkey and laughed. I will never forget that Thanksgiving. I will never forget the cold tile under my knees, the smell of roasting turkey, and the sound of Daniel's laughter as he introduced me to his family like I was a stranger. That day, my whole world broke into pieces. But that day was also the beginning of my revenge. Not the loud, screaming kind of revenge. The quiet, powerful kind that changes everything. Let me start from the beginning so you understand how I ended up on my hands and knees with a scrub brush on a holiday. I grew up in a small town in Ohio called Millbrook. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone. My parents, Laura and James Thornton, were kind people. My father was a high school history teacher. My mother was a nurse. We did not have much money, but we had love. Every Thanksgiving, my mother would cook for 3 days. The whole house would smell like cinnamon and butter. My father would carve the turkey with a big smile on his face. We would hold hands around the table and say what we were grateful for. I was grateful for them. They were my whole world. But when I was 19 years old, everything changed. My parents died in a car accident on a rainy night. A drunk driver ran a red light. They were gone in seconds. I was alone. I had no brothers or sisters. My grandparents had already passed away. I had an aunt in Florida, but she said she could not take me in because she had her own family to worry about. So I learned to be alone. I learned to take care of myself. I finished college with a degree in hospitality management. I worked 2 jobs to pay for my tuition. I was tired all the time, but I was proud. I had built something on my own. After college, I moved to Chicago. I got a job as an event planner at a nice hotel. I was good at my job. I could organize a wedding for 300 people without breaking a sweat. I could handle difficult clients with a smile. My boss said I had a gift. He said I would run my own company someday. That was the plan, my own event planning business, my own name on the door, my own future. Then I met Daniel Whitmore. It was at a charity gala at the hotel where I worked. I was overseeing the event. Everything had to be perfect. The flowers, the music, the food. I was in the middle of checking the place settings when a man walked up to me. He was tall, with dark hair and blue eyes. He was wearing an expensive suit. He smelled like cedar and something sweet. He said, "You must be the woman in charge. Everything looks beautiful." I said thank you and tried to walk away. I was busy, but he followed me. He said his name was Daniel Whitmore. He said he was a lawyer. He said he had never seen anyone work so hard and still look so calm. I was flattered. I was 23 years old. I had been alone for 4 years. I was hungry for kindness. And Daniel was very kind at first. He asked for my number. I gave it to him. He called the next day. He took me to a nice restaurant. He listened to my story about my parents. He held my hand across the table. He said he was sorry for my loss. He said he would never leave me like everyone else had. I believed him. We dated for 6 months. He was charming and generous. He sent flowers to my office. He remembered my favorite coffee order. He told me I was beautiful every single day. I thought I had finally found my person. I thought I was safe. He proposed on the roof of my apartment building. There were candles and roses. He got down on one knee and said he wanted to spend the rest of his life making me happy. I said yes. I was crying. I was so happy. The wedding was small. Daniel said he did not want a big fuss. He said he wanted to keep our love private. I agreed because I thought he was being romantic. Looking back, I see the truth. He did not want a big wedding because he did not want too many people to remember my face. He was already planning to erase me. After the wedding, we moved into a big house in a wealthy suburb. The house had 4 bedrooms, a library, a home theater, and a garden. I had never lived anywhere so fancy. I felt like a princess. But the fairy tale did not last long. The first sign of trouble came 3 months after the wedding. I was still working as an event planner. I had a big project coming up. I came home late one night, exhausted but happy. Daniel was waiting in the living room. He was not happy. He said, "You are working too much. You are never home." I said, "It is just this one project. After this, things will slow down." He shook his head. He said, "You do not need to work. I make enough money for both of us. A wife should be at home. She should take care of her husband and her house." I was surprised. We had never talked about me quitting my job. I loved my job. It was mine. I had built it from nothing. But Daniel made it sound like I was being selfish. He said a good wife puts her family first. He said he needed me at home. I wanted to make him happy. I wanted to be a good wife. So I quit my job. That was my first mistake. After I quit, things changed slowly. At first, it was small things. Daniel would criticize how I dressed. He said my clothes were too casual. He bought me new clothes. They were plain and boring. He said I looked more respectable. Then he started controlling the money. He said he would handle the finances. He gave me a small allowance for groceries and household items. He said I did not need my own credit card. He said I might overspend. I stopped seeing my friends. Daniel said they were a bad influence. He said they were jealous of our marriage. He said real friends would respect that I was a married woman now. One by one, my friends stopped calling. I stopped answering their messages. I was alone again. Then came the cameras. Daniel said he was worried about burglaries. He said the neighborhood had seen a few break-ins. He installed cameras all over the house. He said they were for my safety. But I noticed that the cameras pointed at the kitchen, the living room, the hallways. They watched me all the time. He also started tracking my phone. He said it was a family safety app, but he used it to know where I was every minute of the day. If I went to the grocery store for too long, he would call and ask why. If I went for a walk around the block, he would text and ask where I was going. I felt like a bird in a cage, but I told myself it was because he loved me. I told myself he was just protective. I told myself to be grateful. By the time Thanksgiving came, I had not left the house alone in 6 months. I had not spoken to a friend in 8 months. I had not used my own money in a year. I was Olivia Whitmore on paper, but in reality, I was a ghost. The week before Thanksgiving, Daniel told me his family was coming for dinner. He said his mother, his father, his sister, his aunt, and some cousins. He said it was a big deal. He said everything had to be perfect. I was excited. I thought this was my chance to finally be part of his family. I thought I could show them that I was a good wife. I spent 3 days cleaning the house from top to bottom. I planned a menu. I went to the grocery store with Daniel's list and his money. I cooked for 2 days straight. The night before Thanksgiving, Daniel came into the kitchen. He watched me as I rolled out dough for the pies. He had a strange look on his face. He said, "Olivia, we need to talk." I stopped rolling the dough. I looked at him. He seemed nervous. That was unusual. Daniel was never nervous. He said, "My family does not know about you." I did not understand. I said, "What do you mean? We have been married for 3 years. Surely they know." He shook his head. He said, "I told them we were separated. I told them you moved out. I told them I did not want to talk about it." The room felt cold. I said, "Why would you do that?" He shrugged. He said, "It was easier. My mother would not have approved of you. You do not come from money. You do not have a family name. She would have made our lives miserable." So I lied. I said we were separated. And now I need you to pretend. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. I said, "Pretend what?" He said, "Tomorrow you are not Olivia. You are Maria. You are a maid I hired for the holiday. You will serve the food, clean the dishes, and stay in the kitchen. You will not talk to anyone unless they talk to you first. And you will not, under any circumstances, tell anyone who you really are." I started crying. I could not help it. Tears ran down my face. I said, "Daniel, please, I am your wife. I love you. Please do not do this to me." His face hardened. He grabbed my chin and forced me to look at him. He said, "You will do this, or I will throw you out on the street with nothing. No money, no phone, no house. No one will believe you. I am a lawyer. I have connections. I will make sure you lose everything. Do you understand?" I understood. I understood that the man I married was not a loving husband. He was a monster, and I was trapped. I said yes. I said yes because I was afraid. I said yes because I had nowhere to go. I said yes because I had been so broken down that I did not remember how to fight back. That night, I did not sleep. I lay in bed next to Daniel and stared at the ceiling. I thought about my parents. I thought about the Thanksgivings of my childhood. I thought about the girl I used to be. She was gone. I had killed her with my own silence. Thanksgiving morning came too fast. I got up at 5 in the morning. I put the turkey in the oven. I made the stuffing, the mashed potatoes, the green bean casserole, the cranberry sauce, and 3 kinds of pie. I worked without stopping. My hands were busy, but my mind was empty. At noon, the first guests arrived. Daniel's mother, Alina, swept into the living room wearing a silk dress the color of wine. Her hair was perfectly curled. Her jewelry sparkled under the chandelier. She looked at me the way you look at a piece of furniture. She did not say hello. She just pointed at the dining table and said, "The silver needs polishing. Use the cloth on the sideboard." I nodded. I said, "Yes, ma'am." My voice was soft. I had practiced being soft. Daniel's father, Richard, came next. He was a big man with a loud laugh and cold eyes. He patted Daniel on the back and said, "Good to see you, son. Did you finally fire that lazy cook?" He glanced at me and added, "Is this the new help? She looks familiar." Daniel laughed. He put his hand on my shoulder, but it was not a loving touch. It was a firm, pushing touch. He said, "Dad, this is Maria. She is just temp help for the holiday. She cleans, she serves, she does not talk much. That is why I hired her." Richard looked at me for a moment. Something flickered in his eyes. But he just grunted and walked away. Then came Daniel's sister, Brittany, with her husband, Mark. Brittany looked me up and down and said, "The help is prettier this year. Do not you think, Mark?" Mark just shrugged. He was already drinking whiskey from a crystal glass. Daniel's aunt, Patricia, came with her 2 teenage children. They were rude and loud. They left their coats on the floor for me to pick up. Patricia handed me her suitcase and said, "Put this in the guest room, and bring me a glass of Chardonnay, not too cold." I carried the suitcase upstairs. My arms ached. My heart ached more. I looked at the master bedroom where Daniel and I slept. Our wedding photo was on the nightstand. In that photo, I was wearing a white dress and smiling. I looked so happy. I did not know then that Daniel was already planning to erase me completely. The afternoon went on like that. I served appetizers. I poured drinks. I answered every rude comment with a polite smile. Daniel watched me like a hawk. Every time I opened my mouth, he glared at me, so I stopped trying to speak. At 4 o'clock, we sat down for dinner. I used the word "we" loosely. I did not sit. I stood in the corner with a serving spoon in my hand. Daniel sat at the head of the table. He looked like a king. His mother sat on his right, his father on his left. Everyone was laughing and talking. No one looked at me. I served the soup. I poured the wine. I cleared the plates. I did it all with a smile on my face. My feet hurt, my back hurt, but I kept smiling. Then Daniel raised his glass for a toast. He said, "I want to thank everyone for coming. And I want to give a special thanks to Maria, our maid, for today. She has done a wonderful job. Let us give her a round of applause." Everyone clapped. Some of them laughed. Brittany said, "Yes, Maria, the turkey was almost edible." More laughter. I stood in the corner with a serving spoon in my hand. I wanted to cry, but I did not. I just nodded and said, "Thank you." Then Daniel's Aunt Patricia said, "Daniel, where is your wife? I have not seen Olivia in ages. Is she traveling?" The table went quiet. Daniel looked at his aunt with a strange smile. He said, "Olivia and I are separated. She moved out a few months ago. I did not want to bring it up. It is a sensitive topic." My heart stopped. Separated? We were not separated. I was standing right there. I was holding his dirty plate. I was wearing the apron he bought me from the dollar store. But according to him, I was not Olivia anymore. I was Maria the maid. I opened my mouth to speak, but Daniel looked at me. His eyes were cold. They were the eyes of a man who had already decided my fate. He shook his head slightly. It was a warning. It said, "Do not say a word," so I did not. The dinner continued. They ate pumpkin pie. They drank coffee. They told stories about their vacations and their investments. I washed dishes in the kitchen. The water was hot. The soap smelled like lemons. I scrubbed each plate carefully. I thought about my life. I thought about the girl I used to be. That girl had dreams. That girl had a future. That girl was gone. Then something happened that changed everything. One of the guests, a woman I had not seen before, walked into the kitchen. She was older, maybe in her 60s. She had gray hair pulled back in a bun and kind eyes. She was wearing a simple blue dress, nothing fancy like the others. She carried her empty coffee cup. She said, "Excuse me, dear, where should I put this?" I pointed to the sink. I said, "Just leave it there, I will wash it." She did not leave. She stood there watching me. Her eyes were soft. She said, "You have been working all day. Have you eaten anything?" I shook my head. I had not eaten since breakfast. Daniel said the maid should eat in the kitchen after the guests were done. The woman put her hand on my arm. Her touch was gentle. She said, "What is your name?" I hesitated. I wanted to say Olivia, but I was afraid, so I said, "Maria." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "No, that is not your name." "Your name is Olivia." I froze. The plate in my hand slipped and broke in the sink. The sound was loud. I stared at her. My heart was pounding. I said, "How do you know that?" She smiled. It was a sad smile. She said, "My name is Margaret. I am Daniel's great-aunt. His grandmother was my sister. I have not been to a family Thanksgiving in 20 years. Daniel invited me this year because he thought I would not remember anyone. He thought I was old and confused. But I remember everything. I remember when you married Daniel. I saw your wedding photo in the newspaper. I remember your face. You are Olivia Whitmore, and you are not a maid." Tears filled my eyes. I could not stop them. They ran down my cheeks. I wiped them with my sleeve. I said, "Please do not tell anyone. Please, Daniel will be so angry." Margaret's face changed. The softness was still there, but something harder appeared behind it. She said, angry, "Olivia, what has he done to you?" I could not answer. The words were stuck in my throat. I just shook my head. Margaret took my hand. She led me to a small chair in the corner of the kitchen. She sat me down. She knelt in front of me. She said, "Listen to me. I know things. I know things about this family that would make your blood turn cold. Daniel's father, Richard, is not the man he pretends to be. Daniel learned from him. They are both monsters. But you do not have to stay. You do not have to be afraid." I said, "I have no money. I have no family. He tracks my phone. He watches me. He will find me." Margaret squeezed my hands. She said, "I have money. I have a house in Vermont. No one knows about it, not even Daniel. You can go there. You can start over. But first, you need to help me. You need to help me destroy him." I looked at her. I did not understand. I said, "Destroy him?" She nodded. Her eyes were fierce. She said, "Daniel and his father are involved in something illegal. I have suspected it for years, but I could never prove it. You live in his house. You see his papers. You hear his phone calls. You can find the evidence. And when you do, we will take everything from him. His money, his reputation, his freedom." I was scared. I was so scared. But I was also angry. I was angry at Daniel for making me a maid. I was angry at his family for treating me like dirt. I was angry at myself for being so weak. That anger felt like fire in my chest. I said, "What do I need to do?" Margaret stood up. She looked toward the dining room. The guests were still laughing. Daniel was telling a story. No one was paying attention to us. She whispered, "Daniel has a study. He keeps it locked. But you live here. You know where the key is. Find the key. Go through his files. Look for anything about a company called Whitmore Holdings. Look for bank statements with large transfers. Look for emails about offshore accounts. And be careful, he cannot know." I nodded. I felt sick. But I also felt something I had not felt in years. Hope. Margaret went back to the dining room. I finished the dishes. My hands were shaking, but I kept working. When the last plate was dried and put away, I went to the study. The door was locked. I knew Daniel kept a spare key in the master bedroom, taped under the bottom drawer of his dresser. I had seen him use it once when he lost his main key. I went upstairs quietly. The house was noisy with guests, so no one heard me. I found the key. My hands were sweating. I went back to the study. I unlocked the door. I slipped inside. The study was dark. I turned on a small desk lamp. The room smelled like leather and Daniel's cologne. I went to his filing cabinet. It was locked too, but I found the key in his desk drawer. Daniel was careless. He thought no one would dare go through his things. I opened the cabinet. There were folders labeled with different names. Taxes, insurance, property. Then I saw a folder labeled Whitmore Holdings. I pulled it out. Inside were bank statements. There were transfers of hundreds of thousands of dollars to accounts in the Cayman Islands. There were emails about hiding money from the IRS. There were documents showing that Whitmore Holdings was a shell company. Daniel and his father were using it to launder money from illegal real estate deals. My heart was racing. I took photos of everything with my phone. I put the folder back. I locked the cabinet. I locked the study door. I put the key back under the dresser drawer. I went back downstairs. Margaret was sitting on the couch. She looked at me. I nodded slightly. She nodded back. The guests left around midnight. Daniel was drunk. He stumbled into the living room and looked at me. He said, "Maria, clean up this mess. I am going to bed, and do not wake me in the morning. I want to sleep late." He went upstairs. I stood alone in the living room. The house was quiet. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock. I looked at the empty glasses and dirty plates. I looked at the family photos on the walls, photos where I did not exist. I started cleaning, but I was not sad anymore. I was planning. Over the next few weeks, I became the perfect maid. I cleaned, I cooked, I served, I never complained. Daniel was pleased. He thought he had broken me completely. He thought I had accepted my place. But every night when he fell asleep, I went through his things. I found more evidence. I found emails about bribing a city official. I found records of fraudulent loans. I found a hidden safe behind a painting in his study. The combination was his mother's birthday. Inside were stacks of cash and a USB drive. The USB drive was the biggest find. It contained a spreadsheet of every illegal transaction Daniel and Richard had made over the past 10 years. There were names of other people involved. There were dates and amounts. It was a treasure map of their crimes. I copied everything. I gave the copies to Margaret. She had a friend who was a lawyer, a good lawyer, a lawyer who hated men like Daniel. His name was Mr. Henderson. He was a former federal prosecutor. He had retired and opened a small practice. He specialized in white-collar crime. Mr. Henderson looked at the evidence. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "This is enough to put them both away for a decade. Maybe more, but we need to be careful. We need to go to the FBI, and we need to protect Olivia." Margaret said, "I have a place for her. She will be safe." Mr. Henderson nodded. He said, "Give me 2 weeks. I will prepare the report. In the meantime, Olivia, do not change anything. Keep pretending. Keep gathering evidence if you can, but do not take any risks. Your safety is the most important thing." I agreed. I went back to the house. I went back to being Maria. Every day was a performance. I smiled. I cleaned. I served. Daniel never suspected anything. He was too busy with his own schemes. But the waiting was hard. Every night, I lay next to Daniel and listened to him breathe. I thought about what he had done to me. I thought about the years I had lost. I thought about my parents and how disappointed they would be if they could see me now. Then, in January, everything came to a head. It was a cold night. Snow was falling. Daniel came home angry. He had lost a big case at work. He was yelling before he even walked through the door. He blamed me. He said the house was not clean enough. He said dinner was not ready on time. He said I was useless. I stood in the kitchen. I did not say anything. I had learned that silence was safer. But that night, silence was not enough. Daniel grabbed my arm. He squeezed hard. He said, "You are nothing. You hear me? Nothing. Without me, you would be on the street. I made you. I can destroy you." He pushed me. I fell against the counter. The edge hit my ribs. I cried out in pain. Daniel laughed. He said, "Stop being dramatic. It did not hurt that much. Now make me a drink?" I made him a drink. I handed it to him with a steady hand. Inside, I was shaking. But I kept my face calm. I thought about Margaret. I thought about the plane ticket hidden in my shoe. I thought about the USB drive with all the evidence. That night, when Daniel passed out on the couch, I called Margaret. I whispered, "It is time. I need to leave." Margaret said, "I will pick you up in 20 minutes. Pack only what you need. Leave everything else." I packed a small bag. I took my passport, which Daniel had hidden in his sock drawer. I took the USB drive. I took the burner phone. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen table. I did not want any part of him anymore. Margaret picked me up in a dark car. She drove fast through the snow. We went to the airport. I had a ticket to Vermont under a fake name. The name was Sarah Miller. It felt strange to be someone else, but it also felt like freedom. Margaret hugged me. She said, "Go, I will handle the rest. You will be free soon." I flew to Vermont. I went to Margaret's house. It was a small cottage in the woods. It was warm and quiet. For the first time in 3 years, I slept without fear. A week later, Margaret called me. She said, "It is done." The lawyer filed the report with the FBI. Daniel and Richard were arrested this morning. The news is everywhere. I turned on the television. There was Daniel's face. There was Richard's face. The news anchor said they were charged with money laundering, fraud, and bribery. Their assets were frozen. Their law firm had fired them. Their reputation was destroyed. I watched the screen. I did not feel happy. I felt relief. I felt the weight of 3 years lift off my shoulders. I cried. I cried for the girl I used to be. I cried for the woman I had become. But that was not the end of my revenge. The legal part was done, but I still had one more thing to do. I wrote a letter to every member of Daniel's family. I told them the truth. I told them that I was Olivia, not Maria. I told them how Daniel had treated me. I told them about the Thanksgiving dinner. I told them about the abuse. I told them about the fear. I sent the letter to Alina, Daniel's mother. I sent it to Brittany, his sister. I sent it to Patricia, his aunt. I sent it to everyone who had laughed at me while I served their dinner. A few of them apologized. Most of them did not respond, but I did not need their apologies. I needed them to know. I needed them to see the truth. Daniel was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Richard got 15 years. Their money was gone. Their house was seized. Their name was ruined. I divorced Daniel while he was in prison. He tried to fight it, but he had no money for a lawyer. The divorce was granted in 6 months. I did not ask for anything. I just wanted to be free. Margaret became like a grandmother to me. She helped me start a small event planning business in Vermont. It was not big, but it was mine. I made my own money. I had my own friends. I had my own life. 2 years after Thanksgiving, I met a man named David. He was a carpenter. He built furniture with his hands. He was kind and gentle. He never raised his voice. He never pushed me. He loved me for who I was, not for what I could do for him. David knew my whole story. I told him everything on our 3rd date. I was crying by the end. He held my hands and said, "You are the bravest person I have ever met." He did not look at me with pity. He looked at me with respect. We got married in a small ceremony at Margaret's cottage. There were only 10 guests. Margaret was there. Mr. Henderson was there. A few friends from my new business were there. David's parents were there. They were kind people who welcomed me into their family like I had always belonged. I wore a simple white dress. There were wildflowers in my hair. David cried when he saw me. I cried too. We said our vows under a big oak tree. The sun was shining. The birds were singing. It was nothing like my first wedding. It was better. It was real. Now I am writing this story for 2 reasons. First, because I need to remember where I came from. I need to remember that I was once a woman who cleaned floors and served dinner while her husband pretended she did not exist. I need to remember that I found the courage to fight back. Second, because I want other women to know that they are not alone. If you are in a relationship where someone makes you small, where someone takes away your name, where someone treats you like a servant instead of a partner, please know that you can leave. It will be hard, it will be scary, but there is help, there is hope. There are people like Margaret who will see you and believe you. Do not wait for Thanksgiving. Do not wait for the perfect moment. Your freedom is worth more than any holiday. Your name is worth more than any marriage. I think about that Thanksgiving sometimes. I think about the cold tile under my knees. I think about the smell of the turkey. I think about Daniel's laughter. But I also think about Margaret walking into the kitchen with her coffee cup. I think about her kind eyes. I think about her saying, "Your name is Olivia." That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment I started to take back my power. My name is Olivia. I am not a maid. I am not a victim. I am a survivor. And I am finally free. The lesson I learned is simple but powerful. Revenge is not about hurting the person who hurt you. Revenge is about taking back your power. It is about standing up and saying, "I matter. My story matters, my pain matters, and I will not be erased." Daniel tried to erase me. He tried to make me into Maria the maid. He tried to make me disappear, but he failed, because I am Olivia, and Olivia is a name that will not be forgotten. So if you take anything from my story, take this. Know your worth. Guard your name, and never, ever let anyone make you into someone you are not. If you are listening this and you feel trapped, please reach out. There are hotlines, there are shelters, there are people who will believe you. You do not have to suffer in silence. You do not have to be a maid in your own life. You can be the queen. You can be the one who writes her own story. I am Olivia. And this is my story. It is not a tragedy. It is a victory.